अभी तक। इसमें रोल ऑफ UNHCR, हमारे कोलीग्स यहाँ पे बैठे हुए हैं UNHCR और शार्प से, इसमें बहुत ये 2.5 साल से ज़्यादा का अरसा इसमें हुकूमत पाकिस्तान का, जिस तरह अफरीदी साहब ने बताया कि हुकूमत पाकिस्तान ने UNHCR को मना किया था कि वो अफ़गान रिफ्यूजीज़ को रजिस्टर ना करें। भाई अगर आप ख़ुद रजिस्टर नहीं कर सकते, आपके पास कैपेसिटी नहीं है, तो फिर आप ऐसी रिफ्यूजीज़ पे जो काम करने वाली इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं तो उनको आप ये इख्तियार दे के वो ये काम करें। महाजरीन इस्लामाबाद में नेशनल प्रेस क्लब के बाहर 6 माह तक धरने पे बैठे रहे और उनको इल्लीगल तरीक़ों से उठा लिया गया, उनको गिरफ्तार किया गया और उनको मजबूर किया गया कि वो धरना छोड़कर चले जाएं। एक डायलॉग करवाया गया क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान की नो पॉलिसी वाले सिचुएशन की वजह से सब परेशान थे, और भुट्टो शहीद फाउंडेशन और हम वॉलंटियर्स ने एक डायलॉग करवाया जिसके गवर्नमेंट के और रिफ्यूजीज़ के दरमियान, जिसके नतीजे में एक ह्यूमन राइट्स स्टैंडिंग कमेटी तक ये इशू हम लेकर चले गए। एज अ रिज़ल्ट एक बिल भी मार्च 2023 में मोहसिन दावर साहब ने पेश किया जो जिसको नज़रअंदाज किया गया, उस पर बहस नहीं किया गया। ख़वातीन स्पेसिफिक बहुत सारे मसाइल है। रिकमेंडेशंस वेरी क्विक कि पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज शुड टॉक ऑन दिस वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इशू, और जो एक डिस्कनेक्ट है उसको ख़त्म किया जाए, कानून साजी हो और फॉरेनर्स रजिस्ट्रेशन एक्ट को रिविज़िट किया जाए, UNHCR और ऐसे दूसरे इदारों को इनेबल किया जाए कि वो अपना काम करें। अगर महाजरीन को वापस भेजने का फ़ैसला होता है तो उनको बाकायदा प्लानिंग के साथ और उनको डिग्निफाइड तरीके से भेजा जाए। और 1 अक्टूबर 2023 को जो फैसला किया गया है कि महाजरीन को वापस भेजा है, दिस इज़ ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशंस है अफगान के हवाले से, और हम इसकी मजम्मत करते हैं और चाहते हैं कि हुकूमत मुतालबा करते हैं कि पाकिस्तान इस मसले को हमदर्दाना और इंसान दोस्ताना तरीके से देखे। सॉरी टू टेक योर टाइम।
It's clear what we are seeing from all the speakers is that there is no rest, there is no respite for the Hazara population and for other minorities in Afghanistan at the moment. Majorities include women, of course, children whose education has been stopped, and this refugee crisis only adds to the terrible hardships that Afghans have to go through. I'm going to ask now another activist, the CEO of SHARP, the Society for Human Rights and Prisoners' Aid, to come up to the microphone perhaps and explain what they're doing in aid of the Afghan refugees.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Well, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to congratulate all the organizers of this conference, and I would really appreciate to add this very important session of expulsion of refugees in this conference. And we are gathered here to pay homage to a star icon, Miss Asma Jahangir, who inspires us all, and she was the champion of human rights, democracy and human rights. Thank you very much. Most of the things have been already said by my colleagues, but I have got only 5 minutes to talk about expulsion of Afghan refugees, but the history is so long. We have been hosting generously to Afghan refugees from last 40 years, and all the government and people of Pakistan has contributed and sacrificed their resources, their places, their homes, shared everything with Afghan refugees. But the things happening, developing right now is not right time and the right way to send them as enemies. I mean, if we don't sit with the international community, with the support we have been accommodating them for years, it would add pressure, it would not go in our ways if we send them as forcefully as we are doing. And there are policies which are not discussed or not properly planned for durable solution in this region. I wish we could have discussed all these things with the international colleagues and international community, UN systems, proper planning could have been done. But as Afridi Saab mentioned, we have a couple of waves of Afghan refugees who came to Pakistan. The first wave was in late 70s and early 80s, and the second was in 90s, and third was in 2000, and the last wave after regime change in Kabul was in 2021, where nearly 700,000 Afghans came to Pakistan, but unfortunately we don't had any policy how to accommodate them, provide them legal assistance, registration or anything. And they have been like waiting for their fate, and this also put a question mark on international community, because most of the people who came in Pakistan in last wave in 2021, they came here on the promises of international community. Many high commissions, embassies or international organizations with whom these Afghans were working, and many of them were women, civil society actors, sportswomen and other colleagues. But you know, Pakistan doesn't have any law, and still we are accommodating millions of Afghan refugees. But this is the right time to sit with the international community and place some recommendation and suggestions to create flexible visa regime to speed up their cases which are delayed in other countries. They are waiting for resettlement. Unfortunately, here in, if you see that Afghans' fate have been not only here in this region, they have never been given that opportunity. They can only repatriate. They are very limited of resettlement for them. There is no integration as we don't have any law, and their issues are escalating there, and especially women and children are suffering a lot. There is no job opportunities here for them, and we are working in Afghanistan as well, and there is no infrastructure, proper infrastructure, schools, hospitals, things like that in Afghanistan. If we are sending them like that forcefully, that might create statelessness for the people who will give, because they don't have ID card or registration here, and when they go back, they might not have those documentation and passports or whatever the, so we really need, it's very sensitive matter, and we are sharing border with Afghanistan, and we have to live with them next, like how many years. That's why we should not send them as enemies, we should send them as friends, and we should invest resources, put some, cause nearly 64% of the people, young people in Afghan communities, we need to add resources, bring more resource allocation for skill development. So if they go back to Afghanistan, if they stay here or travel to any other country, they must have some skills to contribute. And we have been lacking that. We couldn't get any benefits from these communities because they have rich culture, rich history, and they have been positively contributing in Pakistan's economy. So if we don't take consideration or think wisely at this time, they might be like going in the hands of other people who can use them in wrongful activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I much appreciate your very practical suggestions, and I hope the diplomats and the UN organizations that are here today will consider these very practical efforts to try and improve the situation. We now come to one of our key speakers, Ms. Christine Chung, who's from the Office of the High Commission for Human Rights of the United Nations. If you'd come up to the platform. It's very important that we get the support of the Human Rights Commission for human rights, and I know the work that Christine Chung has done in order to improve the chances of that happening. Please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the organizers of my favorite conference in Pakistan, the Asma Jahangir conference. I look forward to this every year. I'm here to speak about Pakistan's international human rights law obligations. Pakistan is state party to 7 core international human rights treaties. That means that Pakistan voluntarily ratified these conventions, and as part of that, it accepted legally binding obligations. Part of the process is to report on progress of implementing these treaties and receiving recommendations on the implementation progress from the expert committees that are attached to each of these human rights treaties. 6 of the committees recently reviewed Pakistan in Geneva. 5 of these committees explicitly speak to the situation of Afghan refugees and migrants in Pakistan. The CEDAW committee, the committee that oversees the implementation of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, spoke more generally about the situation of refugees in Pakistan. So for those of you who are not using this for your bedtime reading material, I'm just going to remind you of what the committees have said about Pakistan's obligations under international human rights law regarding Afghans. And so one example was the Committee on the Rights of the Child in 2016 made this observation about Pakistan. Although the committee appreciates that the state party continues to host a large number of refugees, especially from Afghanistan, it regrets the lack of a legal framework for refugees and stateless persons. It also remains concerned that refugee children are often unregistered, especially those whose parents do not hold proof of registration cards, and have no access to education, which forces them to join madrasas, live in harsh conditions, and are subjected to child labor and early marriages, making them easy targets for abuse, trafficking, and religious radicalization. Furthermore, the committee is concerned that children from Bengali, Bihari, and Rohingya communities remain stateless. The recommendation that the committee made to the government of Pakistan at the time in 2016, the committee recommends that the state party take all necessary measures to A,
Very much. First of all, I would like to congratulate all the organizers of this conference, and I would really appreciate to add this.
Integrate refugee and asylum-seeking children into national and provincial education systems on equal terms with nationals of the state party. D, provide refugees, in particular families with children, with adequate housing and provide shelter to those who live in the streets. E, enforce legal measures against child and bonded labor involving refugee, asylum-seeking, and stateless children. F, prevent and protect refugee, asylum-seeking, and stateless children from falling victim to early marriage, abuse, trafficking, or religious radicalization. G, ensure the equal implementation of its citizenship laws with a view to extending citizenship to Bengali, Bihari, and Rohingya children. H, consider ratifying the 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees and its 1967 protocol, as well as the 1954 Convention relating to the status of stateless persons and the 1961 Convention on the reduction of statelessness. Now, I don't have time to read through all the other committees' recommendations on the specific issue of Afghan refugees and migrants. Let me suffice it to say that Pakistan is entering the next phase of reporting obligations. Pakistan will be going to Geneva. They'll be sending a delegation to face the committees. The Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination will be reviewing Pakistan in August. At that time, Pakistan's delegation will have to respond to tough questions about the implementation of the previous 2016 recommendations, and there was one explicitly on the situation of Afghan refugees and migrants. After that, Pakistan will face another review, the one on ICCPR implementation. And again, there was an explicit recommendation about the situation of Afghan refugees and migrants in Pakistan. That is just the beginning. There are even more next year. Time's up. I've been informed, so I will sit down and allow others to speak. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, a very a very important list of suggestions coming from none other than UN itself.
Recording in progress.
So, I'm going to now just quickly nip through the panel behind me and ask them if they have any further suggestions. I'm not looking for speeches or good intentions, but for practical steps that people can take in order to improve the situation for refugees. So first, let me ask Mehbooba, is she there? Mehbooba Saraj? No? Patricia Grossman, if I can ask her, does she have any further comments to make? I think she's gone as well. Mudassir, CEO of SHAR, do you have any further suggestions to make? I think everyone up here is exhausted at the moment. But let me now turn to the audience. Patricia's there. Patricia, do you have any comments to make on what you've heard today? Are there any practical suggestions that people can further take to improve the situation?
Yes, sorry, we lost connection for a bit. So, yes, so I think we made a number of recommendations that I think would be very good if both Pakistan and concerned countries should take. As I mentioned when I spoke before, paths to settlement corridor dynamics were particularly at risk. Those who are at risk because of their intellectual or journalists or that might face reprisals if they return to Afghanistan. That's one, and that's where we haven't seen other countries step forward to provide those kind of paths to safety. Then on the economic front, we made a number of recommendations too. So when the economy in Afghanistan went sort of over the cliff after the Taliban takeover, because of course funding, much of the international development funding was pulled out, and that left a burden on humanitarian aid groups who simply cannot fill that gap. They said so to us explicitly. We put out a report just in February about the healthcare crisis. So there needs to be support for key areas, things that are essential to livelihoods, income generating, electricity, water management, and so on, public health. That would help address that. And of course, we'll keep calling for, as many Africans do, and the work does with the Taliban to end these terrible restrictions that prevent girls from going to school and university and so on. But in the short term, we don't see progress on that yet. Is to address these tackle disability for Pakistan to stop these coercive sort of approaches to pushing Afghans out, for others to step forward to find ways to provide support for Afghans, and to not put back Afghanistan. I mean, Afghanistan is now at a crisis for 6 years since the war started. And of course, there are other crises, but this is one where many countries have been and deeply involved and are now at amnesia about it, and that should happen.
Very important session of expulsion of refugees in this conference. And we are gathered here to pay homage to a star icon, Miss Asma Jahangir, who inspires us all. And she was the champion of human rights, democracy and human rights. Thank you very much. Most of the things have been already said by my colleagues, but I have got only 5 minutes to talk about expulsion of Afghan refugees, but the history is so long. We have been hosting generously to Afghan refugees from last 40 years, and all the government and people of Pakistan has contributed and sacrificed their resources, their places, their homes, shared everything with Afghan refugees. But the things happening, developing right now is not right time and the right way to send them as enemies. I mean, if we don't sit with the international community, with the support, we have been accommodating them for years. it would add pressure, it would not go in our ways if we like send them as forcefully as we are doing, and there are policies which are not discussed or like not properly planned for durable solution in this region. I wish we could have discussed all these things with the international colleagues and international community, UN systems. Proper planning could have been done, but as Afridi Saab mentioned, we have a couple of waves of Afghan refugees who came to Pakistan. The first wave was in late 70s and early 80s, and the second was in 90s, and third was in 2000, and the last wave after regime change in Kabul was in 2021, where nearly 700,000 Afghans came to Pakistan, but unfortunately we don't had any policy how to accommodate them, provide them legal assistance, registration or anything. And they have been like waiting for their fate, and this also put a question mark on international community, because most of the people who came in Pakistan in last wave in 2021, they came here on the promises of international community, many high commissions, embassies or international organizations with whom these Afghans were working, and many of them were women, civil society actors, sportswomen and other colleagues. But you know, Pakistan doesn't have any law, and still we are accommodating millions of Afghan refugees. But this is the right time to sit with international community and place some recommendation and suggestions to create flexible visa regime to speed up their cases which are delayed in other countries. They are waiting for resettlement. Unfortunately, here in, if you see that Afghans' fate have been not only here in this region, they have never been given that opportunity. They can only repatriate. They are very limited of resettlement for them. There is no integration as we don't have any law, and their issues are escalating there, and especially women and children are suffering a lot. There is no job opportunities here for them, and we are working in Afghanistan as well, and there is no infrastructure, proper infrastructure, schools, hospitals, things like that in Afghanistan. If we are sending them like that forcefully, that might create statelessness for the people who will because they don't have ID card or registration here, and when they go back they might not have those documentation and passports or whatever the so we really need, it's very sensitive matter, and we are sharing border with Afghanistan, and we have to live.
Thank you, Mehbooba. Again, another heartfelt statement by Mehbooba Jan. I will just add to her and say that in all the coverage of Afghanistan that I've been doing since 1979, I can assure you that every single country in the region has interfered with Afghan aspirations, interfered with Afghan needs and desires. And this interference, Pakistan is up there very much so. So is, as she said, so is Iran, Central Asia, Russia. All these countries have been interfering in Afghanistan. What is really needed is for countries to pull back and say, let the Afghans decide for themselves. Although many Afghans also want help in being able to devise a proper democratic system for the country. Thank you, Mehbooba. That is very, very, very much appreciated. Is there anyone behind me still who has something to say? Yeah, please.
So let me reiterate.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Kaisar Afridi. I'm the spokesperson for UNHCR. So let me reiterate one thing, that we should. Who? Let me. So let me reiterate one thing, that we should keep this refugee issue, we should see it through a humanitarian lens, not as a political, from a political lens. And if a person is involved in any criminal activities or in any negative activities, this particular person should be tried. The government should take action against this particular individual. But the whole community should not be stereotyped, stigmatized, or generalized for this particular one person. So these people need our compassion, our kindness. If they return back, their life might be at risk. Thank you.
Yes, please go ahead. Please stand up if you can.
I should come there or it's okay? You can hear me from here? I just want to say to Pakistan security establishment as well as the government and all the political parties, for God's sake, Afghan refugees are human beings. Do not treat them as football. Do not kick them and take them whenever you want to and however you want to. Please deal this problem with humanity and keeping in mind that nobody leave their home with happiness. Everyone has right to be at their homes. There are people, Talibans are murderers, Talibans are the killers. How can we risk the lives of those individuals and communities, individuals who work on human rights, individuals who are working on culture, communities who are under threat like Hazaras in Afghanistan? Do not send them back because Afghanistan has become a slaughterhouse for them and they are not sure when they cross the border whether they will reach their home or no. So please treat them as human on the ground of humanity.
I'd like to turn to the audience now. If there are questions directly for someone here up on the panel. Is there a mic in the room? Is there a mic in the room? Right. Now, who's going to ask the first question? Yes, the lady in red.
Hello. Hello. My name is Isha and I am from Government College University, Lahore. My question is from Ms. Christina, that isn't it too much pressure or too much burdenizing for Pakistan to deal with humanitarian issue while we see that USA left Afghanistan burning behind? And there are so many other countries like Turkey and Iran, they are also doing some Afghan repulsions, and people are not asking questions as they are asking questions to Pakistan. This is my question. And my suggestion will be that if the international community make this happen in Afghanistan, then they will talk to the government over there that they have put the sanctions in Afghanistan, but they are not going to go for like negotiations with the Afghan Taliban. So this condition is making the scenario over in Afghanistan very worse. So I think that if the international community make this happen for like Afghan government to lose the sanction or to give them the opportunity to trade with other countries so that their condition will be better and their refugees will go back to their countries and they can have a good and better life living with their self-esteem. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. To respond to that question, I think what I am speaking to is Pakistan's own national obligations. International human rights law is speaking to Pakistan, or not speaking back. These are Pakistan's own international human rights law obligations. The United States also has international law obligations. There are other states, of course, that are involved and need to be involved in a solution. And I think all of the treaty bodies have recognized Pakistan for its decades of hosting the Afghan community as well as other refugees. But what I was speaking to is still something, it's international human rights law. Pakistan has obligations. Other states have obligations, but that does not change the fact that Pakistan does have international human rights law obligations that it undertook voluntarily when it ratified these treaties. And I do understand that there is dialogue here amongst different parties. There is a solution strategy for Afghan refugees group. I know that there are efforts to find practical measures to address this dire situation. But when Pakistan's delegation goes to Geneva to interact with the committees that oversee the implementation of these treaties, Pakistan will have to answer some very difficult questions about the measures it has taken to implement previous recommendations. I gave you one sample. That was just one sample. The Committee Against Torture has made recommendations. The Committee on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights. As I said, 6 of the 7 committees that have reviewed Pakistan have all made recommendations that will help, I think, guide some of the policy making.
Oh.
Yeah,
Can I ask
please
you,
go ahead.
Thank you. Can I ask a question? Just for those of us who don't know, Mr. Javed, you mentioned the 4 waves of Afghan refugees coming into Pakistan. Could we have an idea of what proportion of those different waves are being sent back to Afghanistan? The fully settled ones or the ones who came post-2021? I think it would be helpful to know.
Thank you very much. As Khyber Sahab mentioned earlier, we have different categories of Afghan refugees here in Pakistan. Number 1, undocumented, newly arrived, PUR card holders, ACC card holders. They are different categories. So that's why the first undocumented was in November, October. The government started this expulsion drive, and where they sent nearly 500,000 people which were undocumented. But this is very confused philosophy of cons, because they have different categories among the families. One sister has PR card, one might have child doesn't have any card, or a wife has ACC card. So it's a family, and the expulsion affects a whole family reunification. That's number 1. Secondly, if you look at the numbers of Afghan refugees, the second category comes nowadays. There is a talk about expulsion of these ACC, Afghan citizenship card holders. They were registered in 2017 after the government took one decision to register. There were a couple of decisions of cabinet decision. There were registration of undocumented refugees, and the drive started in 2017-18, where they registered nearly 800,000. So this category as this time is being sent back. 2 days ago, Government of Pakistan allowed 3 months extension to the PUR card holder. PUR card holders are the main category which can take benefits from all. They can access schools, they can access health services. They are most mandated, and UNHCR mandated refugees in Pakistan. So it's very confusing. As I was talking about the first wave, we had never ever had authentic data of Afghan refugees. These numbers are on speculations, and some categories they never came to centers for registration just because they are scared they might get to registration center or get arrested. That's why the proper resource mobilization and resource allocation is not possible. And for the last regime, who came nearly 700,000 people in Pakistan, all of a sudden there was Ukraine crisis, and all the international priority and the resources were diverted to Ukraine, and there was flash floods in Pakistan. That's why government was so busy in handling the situation. Of course, in Pakistan there was 3.5 million flood victims across Pakistan, and there were 700,000 Afghan refugees also affected in flood, and they are still waiting for their fate. So we don't have any authentic data, thus we can't sit with the international community to properly plan for their repatriation or resettlement or integration. That's very confused, and I really stress upon that we should have a reliable data, and we should have at least 3 to 4 years planning with the help with international community or UN agencies, so that we plan their repatriation in a dignified manner. So thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't recall that we have ever had such a serious and meaningful discussion on the issue of Afghan refugees in Pakistan. I hope we have been able to present to you not just the plight and the situation of the refugees, but also solutions and possible practical steps that can be taken both from the Pakistan side and from the Afghan refugee side.
Sir, there is one more question.
Sorry?
So there is one more question from my side, and it is for all of the panelists. My question is that whenever we talk about Pak-Afghan border, so there are always two sides. One supporting the expulsion of refugees, while the other supports the retaining of Afghan refugees in Pakistan. But whenever we talk about Afghan, I have studied about this whole thing. I have studied about this whole thing and came to know that Pakistani authorities and intelligence authorities have raised an issue where they are attaching this Afghan refugees issue with cross-border terrorism and smuggling issue. So they said that Afghan refugees better treat this at a border between two countries rather than a line which they can pass easily. So what's your take on this?
On the cross-border?
Pakistan authorities and agencies several times raised an issue that the refugees which has passed continuously between two borders between Pakistan and Afghanistan have been linked to cross-border terrorism and smuggling. So what's your take on this?
So as I explained earlier, that if anyone is involved in any terrorist or criminal activities, the state has the right to take action against that particular person, rather than generalizing or stereotyping or scapegoating or stigmatizing the whole community. So if someone is involved in any activity, the state should take action.
And secondly, UN or UNHCR partners, we as a SHARP, we only provide free legal aid and assistance to the people who are victims. Either they are victims or they are not involved in any even petty crimes. So that's our services, and we don't appreciate such behavior or the stereotyping as well.
I'm also in support of this thing, but I have compared this thing to US-Mexico border as well. Can you listen to me now? Can you listen to me? Sir, I have also compared this thing to the US-Mexico borderline. So it's really much same, like Pakistan-Afghanistan border and US-Mexico border. But US did same as well. They have a very strict policy on Mexicans. So, although I am in support of retaining the Afghan refugees in Pakistan, it is against the human rights.
Can I respond to that? I'm not sure if I understood the question, but here as Pakistani citizen, as a citizen of global world, we definitely condemn all the illegal activities happening anywhere by anyone in the whole world. Talking about the Afghan borders, Spin Boldak and Torkham border, I have always talked about it, that there should be a very transparent check and balance situation at the borders, Afghan borders on both sides. there are many illegal things happening, we all know that. And the refugees who are going back, let me tell you, they are coming back by illegal ways. And of course, when there is no support by the forces, it cannot happen. And the refugees who came after post-August 2021, all of them did not have their legal documents. They gave bribe on our borders. The women were sexually assaulted and abused, and there are few cases of rape also on the borders. So these all things are happening. Although sitting here talking about an ideal situation, we can condemn it, and of course as a lawful citizen we always go with the law, but there is a need to have a holistic security and check and balance approach on the borders, of course.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wind up now. Thank you very much for attending this session. Thank you very much for all your inputs and suggestions. I thank the speakers also for being so acceptable of the problems we've had with the microphone and other things. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming.
Recording stopped.